My name is Era, and I'm the host of the TamilCreator podcast. I chat with creators from all over the world to share their stories and discuss hot topics in a way that I hope inspires, educates, and entertains you. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the TamilCreator. This is your host, Era, and today I'm going to be chatting with Sibi Selvanathan, and he works in tech across a number of industries. I guess in tech and also banking as well. And during the pandemic, he did something pretty remarkable, which was he took his newfound time and passion and he checked off an item on his bucket list. And that was, publishing a book. And it's very rare kind of group of people. I know it sounds commonplace, but only a small number of, people that have actually published a book. And, he's now a published author that has a book in the top five book in the category of epic fantasy and on Amazon. So Sibi, welcome to the podcast. Excited to kind of share your story. I always like to start at the beginning. So, why don't we kind of get into, your upbringing, your childhood, and kind of how that, might have planted seeds or sparked kind of an interest in you, eventually becoming the storyteller.
All right. Well, first of all, thanks for that introduction, Ara. I'm happy to be on the podcast. It's a great opportunity to share my story with a lot more people who might be listening in. But yeah, I think being a storyteller was something I started really, really young. I read a lot of books when I was younger. I was really into Goosebumps, and I could zoom through those books in just a couple of days when I was just like 8, 9, 10 years old, because I just wanted to read the story. And then when I wasn't playing sports or watching TV, I tried writing. And this was like back in the day where I actually had paper and a clipboard, right? No computers at that time. So it was a lot slower, but my stories would go on for like 3-4 pages, and that would be the entire story. Literally just beginning, middle, and end within, I don't know, less than 200 words. But then I started trying even more. Took a break for a few years. The writing was kind of a thing that came and went. I would go for a couple of months where I would write a lot, and then a couple of years where I didn't do it at all, and then go back to it again. It always came around the time, like the parts of my life where I had a lot of time. So eventually, when I got to high school, when I had the summer, I didn't work in the summer. It was all soccer, but that was just in the afternoon. So during the day, I started writing again. And then in high school, I actually wrote 2 novels, but those were just like one draft novels that I never really read again. I never edited or anything like that. But I always remember doing that because I thought, okay, you know what? I have potential here. I typed out a novel that's more than 100 pages long, right? Like if I could go back and redo it again, I probably would, but there's something here. And then in university, when you had 4 months off in the summer, and then again, I wasn't working, I actually wrote a Harry Potter fanfic, posted that online on a Harry Potter website, and then I actually got a lot of good comments on that. So I thought, okay, you know what, there's something here. And then, like you said, pandemic hit, and then before the pandemic, I was always so busy, soccer, hanging out, working out, and all that. And then now I had lockdown. Is like, oh, where'd all this time come from? I didn't know what to do. So I'm like, I'm never gonna get this time again. Let's just go for it. And the end product, I have a book on Amazon.
That's awesome. When I read the part in your Tamil culture article and you kind of mentioned you love Goosebumps, like I think I had like 40 or 50 Goosebumps that I ordered when back in the day when we had those Scholastic kind of whatever those catalogs, and like even the library. I think I've read at least 50 Goosebump books.
I still
love the
mine.
TV show.
Yeah.
I loved Are You Afraid of the Dark, all that stuff. Or like, the Choose Your Adventure used to be big back in the day as well.
Yep.
With kind of horror stories. And you talked about kind of going to the mall and always kind of dropping by Chapters. It's funny, like my first date with my wife was actually at Chapters because I wanted to kind of, I like Chapters, but I also wanted to kind of impress her with my reading or my love of reading, and it worked. And another part of it, I think your childhood, which I only realized after the fact when I guess we had connected, was your sister Supankian, I guess she's part of the group of women that wrote Amutha Learns, which it's all small world, but they were episode 1 of my podcast. So
really? Yeah.
So like how did like, did you guys like, because you guys both wrote, number
Mhm.
one, were you guys like aware of kind of that connection of you guys both love writing, or like did you guys feed off each other or like inspire each other? How did that work?
Yeah, and honestly, it's exactly as you said. I think we fed off each other and inspired each other. Well, I can speak for myself. I was inspired by what she was doing with her two colleagues who I knew as well, and that they were making a children's book that Amutha Learns that was really going to help young Tamil kids who really identify more with their culture. And then I wanted to kind of target an older audience with a different style of book. And then Svangi was the one who actually gave me some of the ideas for referencing Tamil culture. Like the names of the villages, I was talking to her, and she's the one who told me, okay, you can use these 5 names for your villages, and they both represent a different kind of climates or different kind of landscape. And I thought, oh, that's perfect. And then I kind of used her to run it by her some of the things that I made to reference Tamil culture just to make sure it was accurate. And when she gave me like the thumbs up, I thought, okay, that's great, right? So yeah, and I obviously bought a copy of their children's book and went through it. And you know what? I'm not the best at Tamil, but when I was looking through it and reading through it, I'm like, you know what? Even I learned a thing or two in here.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. And
Mhm.
again, I think congrats again on that book that you wrote, The Demon's Return.
Thank you.
Yeah, I know you kind of talked briefly about kind of why you decided to write the book, like you've always wanted to do something like that. You had a bit more time because of the pandemic, but what what is it about kind of the fantasy category, and like why did you decide now was kind of the time to kind of really crack down and focus on producing this book?
Yeah, for sure. So I did read a lot of fantasy novels growing up, and then of course I read Harry Potter, like everyone else did. But I'm looking at my bookshelf right now. But it's a lot of it's fantasy based, and what I really liked about it is the fact that it's my world to create. I can put as much magic in there as I wanted to. I can like have different types of characters as I wanted, different kind of regions. It was a world I wanted to build, and I like the idea of like magic in there, but I didn't want magic to be like, oh, this can solve. You want to solve a problem, just use magic, and I didn't want that, right? So it was just for me to have control over, I guess, the environment or the culture of the book. And now I can like have the characters shape the way that I really want to. And I guess like why I decided to do it now is like it's something I always wanted to do. I wanted to cross it off the bucket list, right? And then I was never gonna get that time again. And the success I've had so far has motivated me to keep pushing, because I thought that when I first started writing it, it would just be the one book, but then the idea got so big that I planned out a trilogy with even a prequel and such. But the when I was getting all these reviews or random people from all over the world messaging me saying, "Hey, I really enjoyed your book," I just thought, you know what, I'm going to keep going, right? They're like, and it's not fair to the readers who want to know what happens next, right?
When you kind of were promoting this book, it was
Mm-hmm.
always in Amazon, which has a huge distribution, like people can
Yes.
kind of find books kind of randomly. But was it a lot of people that randomly found your book, or like did you do anything specific, like from a marketing point of view, to get more awareness around it as well?
Yeah, so I worked with my sister on this when it came to marketing the book, and I found a lot of and I want to use Instagram since that's I'm not really a big social media guy, and that's the only social media I have. And I knew a lot of people that I had on my personal Instagram were people that I still keep in contact with. And so I thought, okay, if I can use them to kind of branch out a tree to reach out to other new people, it would really work. And then I also reached out to some artists on how to create certain scenes in my books through a picture, and I could share certain passages from my book that made people really interested. I was like, oh my god, that's what's happening. And then I also shared certain things like what the Tamil culture references in my book, such as the villages and the languages and the names, where they're all coming from. I shared a couple posts on that too to make it a bit more kind of educational and informative. And then I started reaching out, like I reached out to you guys at Tamil Culture. I started reaching out to some other people who shared my posts, and then I got a decent following. But the following grew the more I shared about my experience writing the book. Because even right now, I'm getting like friends and family messaging me saying, "Hey, I know a guy that wants to write a book, and they're interested in talking to you. Can I give them your number?" And I've had like several conversations with people who were inspired, and they want to do the same thing as well.
Oh, that's pretty cool. This episode is sponsored by nobody. That's right, nobody. So if you could be kind enough to hit that subscribe button, that would mean a lot to me. That's, you said you use Instagram and I think LinkedIn as well, but like,
Oh, yes.
so it's like you're saying a lot of the people that bought your book were not necessarily people that you knew, but they were like maybe a second or third connection. Or has there been anybody that's kind of completely randomly like found your book? Like, have you reached out to everybody that's left a review or like that's bought the book and kind of just seen how they've found out about the Demon's Return? Or like, I'm curious.
Yeah, I want to, but unfortunately, on Amazon, they only tell you where the book was bought in what country. It doesn't actually tell you who bought it. So I can see that in the last month, I had like 3 or 4 sales in the States, a couple in Singapore, a couple in France, a couple in England. I don't actually know who it is, but people. And yeah, I did forget to mention that I used LinkedIn to share my first post, and I got a lot more engagement on that than I could ever believe. And then people were adding me on LinkedIn and on Instagram and sending me messages. And then I would just respond to everything truthfully, being like, yeah, I did it. This is how I plan. My next book, I don't have a date for it yet, but it's gonna come soon. Stay tuned.
And like, how long did it take you from when you said, "Hey, I'm gonna write a book,"
Yeah.
to when you actually kind of had your final copy ready for publishing?
Yeah, I would say about a year and a third, year and a half, right? Like, I think it was when March 2020 when we went into lockdown, and I literally started 3 4 days after lockdown because my life went from being so busy to, oh, what do I do when I'm done work for 7 hours, right? And it started off really really hard because I thought I was trying to write the perfect book right from the beginning, but it was only after I decided, you know what, and I read online tips that no one's going to read your first draft, that I just turned everything into point form notes and made chapter notes going along the way. And if you read my first draft compared to my final draft, they are nowhere near, like, it's almost like it's two completely different books.
You obviously don't do this full time. You
No.
work full time, I believe, in tech right now, apparently, right?
Yeah. So right now I work as kind of a product manager for a tech company.
And then, so like, how do you manage kind of like, I always hear from people that want to do something. So whether it's like writing a book or like something that, hey, I have a job, I have this obligation, I have that. But
Mhm.
obviously, like you have a full-time job, I'm sure you have some other obligations as well. But you manage to squeeze out in, 18 months from beginning to end a book. So like, how did you manage to do that? How did you manage to balance all of that?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Like for me, I've always been good with time. I don't like even if I have 5 minutes, like I try not to stare at my phone or anything like that. I try and like do something productive with it. So for me, I'm always a morning person as well. So I was working actually at another company, but when I first started writing the book, and that one, things didn't really start picking up until like 9:30, 10 a.m. And I was up at like 7 eating a good breakfast, and then at my computer by 8. In that first hour, I could have scrolled the internet, I could have done whatever I could, but at that time, I was like, nope, I'm gonna start writing. All right, so I used that hour and a half to write the book when I was first started writing, and then afterwards, when there were times where I was so busy with work that I didn't get a chance to actually write anything. But then there are some lull moments where it's like, you know what, it's a weekend, I don't have anything planned for the whole day. And then I would just sit there for 10 hours and start either writing or editing or things like that. So it wasn't consistent all the time, but yeah, at some periods where for a couple of weeks I'd be on a good roll. And then there was at one point where for 3 months I didn't even write anything because I was just so busy. But then when I got back into it, I would just pour my heart and soul into it.
Yeah, I've heard from, I think there's another podcast guest, Tissy. He's like, he creates short, like, I guess films or shorts, like short
Right.
videos on YouTube, and he said the same thing. Like he works at a job that starts at like 8:30 or 8 o'clock or something, and he
Mhm.
wakes up at like 6 to like every day, no matter if he feels like it or not. Like he consistently writes for 1 hour.
Mhm.
That like that just has helped him produce so much content just by doing 1 hour a day, and like 1 hour a day over a year, that's 365 hours, which is
Yep.
about 12 days straight of writing or
Mhm.
producing content, which is pretty remarkable. People don't, I think, I just love the fact that you guys have consistently done it, because I'm a fan of consistency. Anybody that can do something for a long period of time, I'm a huge fan of, because I feel like it's such an underrated skill.
Mhm.
It's a low in frequency in terms of what I've seen from people. Not that many people do it. It's like
Yeah.
people just have these spurts for like 2 weeks and then they just don't do it.
Yeah.
So I just love the fact that you did that.
Huh, appreciate that. Yeah, and I guess like for me, I was also motivated by the fact that like after I was about three drafts in, that's when I started telling people. And like at the beginning, only my wife knew. And then maybe like a draft or two in, some of my family and close friends knew. And then when I was like three, four drafts in, that's when I started putting it up on social media. But then when I put it up on social media, it got to me. It's like, oh man, I made a commitment. I have to stick through with this. And I had a like a release date as well. And committed to it, and that was my motivation, and I got it out there. And I guess that my other motivation was a lot of people who were telling me I never knew someone else who has done something like this. Like they know people who wrote children's stories or anything, but they don't know anyone who wrote a novel. Now, in my time, like while I was marketing the book, I connected with a couple other Tamil authors, and they were and showed support by buying their books as well. But most of them were in the nonfiction, but I was more like of the fiction, the fantasy world.
Have you ever put up your stuff? I was just looking it up.
Mhm.
I think it's called the Wattpad. Have you heard of Wattpad
Oh
before?
yeah, I have heard of Wattpad. Yeah.
Wattpad, yeah, it's like such a cool idea. They call it kind of a
Mhm.
YouTube of publishing, where it's almost like you're building in public. Where I think I've seen people put up like their first parts of their like manuscript or like script or
Mhm.
whatever it is, and kind of crowdsource feedback of like what could be improved.
Yeah.
And I've heard of people getting like movie deals or content deals based on that. So I just thought I'd throw that out there.
Yeah, I have. I have thought about putting it on Wattpad. It's the same kind of like idea or algorithm as YouTube. You got to make sure that you get your views and you get your likes and your interactions with it as well. My only worry with Wattpad is that for me, I would want to put up a final or finished product
Got it.
one by one. To put something up on Wattpad would just when you write it chapter by chapter, you don't know if someone could say that's a good chapter, but then later on when the book is done, it's like, I don't actually need it anymore.
That's true. That's a good point. I just
Yeah.
like this. I've seen more of it. It's like they call it build in like public, where whether
Mhm.
it's like write a book or build a business, like it's just like it's like like you said, nobody really knows somebody that's written a book. Like you might
Yeah.
have heard of different authors, but nobody actually knows somebody that's done it, kind of got the behind the scenes part of like the process of how to write a book. So I just thought it'd be like a fascinating idea. It's something I'm
Yeah,
thinking about in the
sure.
future as well, like building
Mhm.
something in public. I don't know what it would be, just so I could learn, but also share those learnings in public and kind of, connect with a group of people around that. But just like an idea. Like, yeah.
No, for sure. And I know Wattpad is actually growing really, really quickly. So if in the future I was actually thinking of if I do get a decent enough following, maybe put up short stories related to some of the minor characters in my book, like put up a couple pages here and there that this minor character, this is their backstory, this is what they're doing when the main story is happening, things like that.
I
Yeah,
also I'm also a personal fan of the founder. It's funny. It's like a funny story where our startup, when we started, like it was like 8, 9 years ago, maybe even a bit more than that. I think
Mhm.
we had a booth beside him when he was like just him and like somebody else. It was like a when he just
Oh,
started Wattpad,
yeah.
and he was doing some consulting work to pay the bills, and like he wasn't really getting anywhere with it because it was like really early on in terms of mobile adoption and things like that.
Mhm.
And he went from that to like, I think he sold his company recently for like a few $100 million or something, which is
Yeah.
crazy because we started around the same time, and like he obviously great success and like really humble guy, really nice guy. So it was just pretty cool. I also, I guess, want to, you said people have reached out to you and you've
Mhm.
given kind of advice on how to write a book. So what advice would you give to someone out there considering writing a book, regardless of what age they are? Did you know that every time you left a 5 out of 5 review for this podcast, a Tamil parent lets their child pursue a career in the creative arts? Okay, that's probably not true, but if there's a chance that it is, do you really want to jinx it? Leave a review. Do it for the young creative in you.
My advice is generally geared towards people who want to write a novel. I've had people reach out to me about children's books, and I always pass them off to my sister-in-law for Amutha Learns. And there's a lot of other children book authors out there that I've had gotten in contact, like Words by Mira, Tamil Storytime, Kanaga Books, Varanam Books, and they're all doing wonderful things with the community. But when it comes to novels, my advice would be there's no deadline, and no one, and you don't have to tell anyone, or you don't have to like race towards the end. A book has no expiry date, and your first draft is basically you telling the story to yourself. Your final draft is you telling your story to other people, and there's many steps along the way, and only you, and I guess this applies to real life, is like only you know your journey to the final product, right? People will only ever see what happens at the end. People will only ever see the success. They don't see the multiple failures along the way, right? And so if you do want to write a book from the beginning, don't worry about if a sentence doesn't make sense. Just keep writing, because the worst thing you write is still better than anything you don't write. Keep writing. Eventually the story will pop into your head. When you're done your first kind of draft, even if it's all point form notes, print it out, write on top, and reread it, write on top, see what you like, see what you don't like, and then go for it again.
And you spoke of failures, and I think something you brought up, and I'll let you kind of elaborate on this more, is you took a risk of kind of leaving a good job that you had to kind of work at a startup, and then it kind of ended up not working out. Tell us a bit more about that experience and kind of what you learned from that.
Yeah, I had a really good job at a company downtown, and it had a really good potential. But I saw a posting online about a startup in Silicon Valley that needed someone who had my skill set. And this was before work from home became so popular. And so it was the opportunity to work from home for a company from San Francisco, and then they would fly me out several times. And so I thought, wow, this sounds incredible. And you would get I would get shares, and then these shares would be like if the company sells for millions of dollars, I'd become a millionaire. I was thinking about that way. It didn't work out so like that way in the end, and then I learned the hard way that you only ever hear about the success stories down in like Silicon Valley or San Francisco area. You don't ever hear about the all the failures. And so no, the company is still going now, but it's just stagnant. It's not looking to grow or anything like that. But at the time when they were trying to really build out robustly, they didn't have the revenue to continue with it. And then I learned from that at that moment that, you know what, even if you're a CEO or like a very high level ranking at a company, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're not going to make mistakes yourself, which kind of made everyone seem more human to me. And so that taught me, is like, you know what, I got, I don't know how to say this, but like that taught me that I can do something special as well, right? If people are CEOs of multi-million-dollar companies and they're making mistakes, then why can't I put myself on that level, right? On something that I'm passionate in. I can make the mistakes as well, but I can learn from that and continue to grow.
So what did you do after things didn't work out there? Like, how did you recover, or not recover, but go from there?
Yeah. I mean, they were very nice about it, gave us like the 2-month severance, and then allowed us to look for jobs while we had our kind of deadline date. And so I was able to find another job right away. Well, not right away. I was able to find another job rather quickly, so I wasn't stressed for too long.
I always like to ask this as well with, it seems like a lot of people that are creative that, they're not doing it necessarily full time. There's someone like yourself that have a different skill set or experience that kind of helps them pay the bills, or like, kind of support their life while they're able to kind of take this risk on the side, which is kind of down the creative side. So it kind of, brings me to the topic of money. Like, what is your relationship with money like? and like, how do you think about investing or just using money to kind of do the things that you want to do?
Yeah. And I honestly feel like I have a really good relationship with money, or like a very good understanding with it. Like I know a lot of Tamil families growing up, like when the parents coming over here, they're not coming over here with thousands and thousands of dollars, right? You grew up in like cramped apartments where only my dad worked for a long period of time, and so my mom didn't work until we were a lot older, and so I saw their struggles, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to help out, and but I want to get to the future in the future where I don't have to struggle that much, and my whole family is well taken care of. So I started refereeing soccer when I was like 12, 13 years old, and I used that money to help my dad. Like, just it wasn't much, but it's better than nothing. And then when I finally started working, just started helping my dad out a lot more with that. But then after a while, that's when I started learning, you know what, maybe I have to learn how to use this money that I have saved up on the side smartly. So, and how investing actually works. So instead of just leaving whatever excess money you have in like a banking account, invest it in something. And I find that investing, it's not so much about how knowledgeable you are with the market, but more so how strongly you are able to control your emotions when certain things happen. Like I bought some GameStop stocks when it was skyrocketing, and that didn't go so well because it was just coming right back down. I also bought Bitcoin when it was at its real height several years ago. Then it started coming back down. But for me, I'm like, okay, you know what? Let's just take our time, see how it goes, and then when it started climbing back up, eventually years later, now I'm at a profit. So now I'm in the market, but I am in the safest S&P 500 dividend paying stocks that you could actually and that you could put your money in, and it just letting it grow at a natural rate that in 5 years it'll double. I'm like, okay, that's fine with me, right? And then how I work with like my full-time job is, yeah, that's the money that pays the bills. And I do enjoy doing it. It's a good job, it's a good company, right? And I'm actually very happy with where I am there. But of course, there's always that lifelong dream of what you want to be. And then when I was younger, my lifelong dream was actually to be a pro hockey player or a pro soccer player. So I think I'm a little too old to achieve that right now, right? But the third option was to be a professional, an actual author, and I did achieve it. It's not what's making me famous, and my idea with it from the beginning was this was never going to be something that would give me full-time money kind of thing. I would always work my job, but the book thing would just be something on the side. However, if I did sell 1 million copies one day, I wouldn't say no. And if it does become a Netflix series, I wouldn't say no either, right?
No,
Yeah.
that's awesome. I loved everything you said. Yeah, like you said with investing.
Mhm.
Um, I know, especially during like the COVID and like, I guess people had extra time or money and,
Yeah.
everyone is doing meme stocks or like just kind of riding the wave of different cryptocurrencies.
Yeah.
Like you said, the thing that people um, fail at is either trying to time the market or kind of trying to act when they act emotionally versus like setting up a system
Yeah.
where like you were saying, like I bought like Ethereum when it was super low,
Right.
and then I kept it. But like I was kind of like always checking things versus like now, like I just consistently buy every month,
Mhm.
like Ethereum and Bitcoin. I also put into, like you said, like I used to try to buy individual stocks and like I found myself checking it all the time and like
Yeah.
acting irrationally. I just bought S&P 500 every month, just put it in there. I just set it and forget it. When I get
Yeah.
dividends, I just repurchase more S&P 500. It's not that hard because it's like you play a long-term game, like you said, every 6 or 7 years, if you're making like
Yeah.
10% a year or whatever it is, your money doubles. It's so as
Yeah.
long as
Exactly.
you don't act impulsively, you can double like your money every 7 years, which is pretty remarkable. You just have to
Yeah.
have the patience or the discipline not to touch your money.
And,
So,
and I think Warren Buffett himself like did a study where he saw that the S&P 500 performed better over that like a 6 or 7 year span than individual people who were investing in certain stocks.
but I will say this, I think to follow a ton of content around this is a great quote that I heard, which is, to build wealth, you need to concentrate. To preserve wealth, you need to diversify. So meaning the
Yeah.
people that have done really well historically, they've made big bets in one space. So like whether it's a business they're doing or like just, something that they're doing, it's like very specific and all their money is there. So if you look at like Amazon, Jeff Bezos, like 99% of his wealth is in Amazon.
Yeah.
But then after, when they made that money, they put it into different things to kind of preserve that wealth so that it's a bit more safe.
Yeah.
So there's something to both strategies, but yeah, I'm always curious about what people have to say. So loved your answer. How about like, as you've kind of gone along this author journey, you wrote this book. What's your support system been like? And like, have people generally said positive things to you, or has anybody kind of questioned or criticized kind of this choice you made to kind of spend your time, your free time, writing a book versus like, I don't know, like doing something else that makes money versus something you're just passionate about?
Yeah, and it's a good question. I'm thinking about it.
Money can be hard to come by, but here is a $100 opportunity for you. Join my free newsletter for free exclusive content and a free chance to win $100 when I hold special draws. Did I mention that it's free?
I feel like I have a very, very big circle in my life. Like people who came to my wedding were just like, wow, I didn't realize you had so many friends. And the thing is, what I tell them is it used to be a lot more, but like the people I keep in contact with have all been such positive influences on my life, right? They're people that I like at any point of the day, I can give them a call and then say, hey, how's it going? Right. And it really showed when everybody found out I was writing the book, when they were all super positive and super encouraging and saying, wow, like that's incredible. Like this went from my Tamil friends, even my non-Tamil friends, like or guys I play soccer with or coach soccer with. Everybody was extremely supportive, and I'll always be grateful for that because it showed me that I'm truly blessed to have such positive people in my life. Right. The only thing they questioned was where did you find the time to do this? How were you able to do this? And those kinds of questions. I said, I just stuck with it, kept my discipline, kept my focus, and I went with it. Right. So yeah, truly blessed to have the family and friends that I do.
You mentioned, when you got married, you had this big circle of friends, and like, how have you found, this is more of like I guess another random question, as
Yeah.
you kind of grown older in different life stages. So like once you got married, like, like you got older and you had like other obligations. Have you noticed your friend circle or like people that you surround yourself, has that changed? Or like who has survived kind of the test of time with you?
Yeah. And that's the thing. Like it has survived. The only difference is I might not see them as often as possible. Right. Instead of we're going from chilling every week to chilling every couple of months. But every time we do get together, it's like no time has passed. And I think there was a quote that said, if you've been friends with someone for 7 years, you're going to be friends with them for the rest of your life. And some of these guys I've been friends with for like 10 to even almost 20 years. So even if I don't see them for a couple of years, we're still texting, we're still chatting, I have the multiple group chats going. And then there's always someone who pops in there, is like, hey, check out this video. And then that starts a random conversation here or there. But yeah, they like, everyone from the wedding has pretty much survived the test of time, and I'm still in contact with them today.
Cool. What would you, if you had a chance to kind of go back and in a time machine and visit your 16-year-old self,
Yeah.
What would you tell him?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, I'd probably tell them to invest in Bitcoin at a certain time, and when my dad's buying a house, to buy to really ask the bank for multiple loans so that we can buy multiple houses or something like that. So then we know which investments are going to go well. But in terms of other things that if I can't tell them about what's happening in the future, I would say you're doing well. Right. Like I know when I was 16 years old, I probably came off as a bit cocky, right? But I think that was just one of those fake it till you make it kind of things where there were times where, like, if you're playing soccer or you're at school and you suddenly start questioning yourself, like, am I really this good, or am I really this smart, or anything like that? And I would tell my 16-year-old self, and I was also in a rush to do a lot of things. Like, I wanted to get to uni, I wanted to get finish the degree, I want to get out, get married, and all that type of stuff as quickly as possible. And I would tell my 16-year-old self, I was like, you don't need, not only do you not need to rush, but take your time and enjoy it, and continue to focus on the things that you like to do, and always value yourself, right? Because there's going to be times along the way you're not going to like every single person in your life, and just remember that you don't have to please all of them or anything like that. And yeah, basically take your time when you want to do something, when you're hanging out with your friends, when you have no responsibilities. At 16, this is one of some of the more, I wouldn't say easy, because a 16-year-old has different like life problems compared to like a 30-year-old. But these are times where you have less responsibilities, right? So when on the weekend, take the time to enjoy hanging out with your friends, because me and my friends at that point in time, we chilled there all day. Like, we would be playing sports or going to movies and all day, and it's like, really enjoy that time. And don't be in a rush to get to university. Really stick there and enjoy your time. And as well, those goals that you want to hit, you're going to hit one of them eventually. So that is the being an actual author. Okay. And if you want to be a professional soccer player, then you're gonna have to train a lot harder than you actually did. Yeah.
And on the flip side, if you're looking forward in terms of your personal legacy, how would you want to be remembered by friends and family?
Yeah, I want to be remembered as that guy that was very positive around everyone. Like, when I was around, like, if I'm hanging out with everyone, they know that I'm keeping it positive, keeping it lighthearted, or that guy that brightens up the room when I walk in, and that people were just like, you know what, we love hanging out with you.
Got it. Okay, well, that's a good segue into the final part of our podcast. It's a segment I like to call Creator Confessions, where basically I'll state a bunch of, like, say a bunch of things or statements, and you'll just give me the first answer that pops into mind. Ready? And it's meant to be a speed round.
Okay, I'll try my best.
Awesome. Favorite Tamil food?
Mutton rolls.
Something that scares you?
Spiders.
Insecurity that you have?
People who are taller than me.
Favorite show you're watching?
The Challenge.
Oh, I heard about that. Okay. A place you're itching to travel to after the pandemic is over?
Oh, back to Bali.
Bali was great. You been there?
Yeah, I've been there. It's great.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
Fellow Tamil creator you want to give a shout out to?
Amutha Learns.
Favorite childhood memory?
I once scored one of the best soccer goals you'll ever see. Top bins, or like top corner, and it was in a really, really tight game.
Awesome. That was very quick, so very memorable for you.
Oh, yeah.
What do you like to do for fun outside of work?
Play sports.
Favorite movie of all time?
Oh man, there's so many. I'd probably say Mulan.
Wow, Mulan.
Oh, the cartoon version, not the new version.
Got it. A purchase that you've made in the last few years that you splurged on, but you have zero regret about?
Well, it's probably all the books that I bought.
Pet peeve?
Oh, when people aren't punctual.
If you knew that you were going to die tomorrow, a regret that you would have?
Probably need to spend more time with the wife.
Celebrity whose life you want to experience for just one day?
Paul Rudd.
Or a book you've read or a podcast you've listened to recently that's had an impact on you?
I don't know if it's recent, but the Harry Potter books, massive influence.
A new belief, behavior, or habit that's improved your life?
People aren't thinking about you as much as you think they are.
And finally, a piece of advice that you would give to your fellow Tamil creators out there?
Oh, keep doing what you're doing, and let's keep putting Tamil people on the map.
Awesome. That was great, Sibi. I think people are going to enjoy this one, especially those aspiring authors out there.
All right.
I feel like I'm hearing more and more I mean, I've heard a lot of the children's book authors, but I've heard of like, I just found out about S.J. Sindhu and like a few others
Oh yeah.
who were like Tamil authors. So it's pretty cool.
Mhm.
Thank you for kind of hopping on. For somebody that's kind of listening to this that was inspired, and they want to reach out to you for advice or just they want to collaborate, whatever it is, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
Yeah, you can follow me on Instagram at author_SK Selva. And I also have my own website, which is www.authorskselva.com. You can reach out to me on either of those. I respond to everything. Like any question, no matter what it is, I'll always respond.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you kind of again jumping on.
Yeah.
Look forward to part 2 of hearing about when you launch it and helping you hopefully promote that.
For sure.
Maybe you should create some kind of NFT around that.
Maybe.
I was just reading about Gary V. His book that he just came out with. I think I don't know if you've heard of it, but basically, if you buy 12 of his books, you get like a surprise NFT.
Mhm.
And using this strategy, and obviously like Gary V, super popular. I think he's had 1 million plus pre-orders, which is like the most popular pre-order for any book ever.
Wow.
And it's probably going up. Like I'm thinking of buying 12 books just to get that NFT because I feel like it's going to be cool, but maybe for something for you to think about.
Yeah, if it works, it works. You sold 1 million copies.
Yeah,
that's all I need.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Sibi, for kind of jumping on. And for the audience listening, I appreciate you guys as always.
All right. Thanks, Era. Thanks, everyone who listened.